Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest edition of another NHL Draft Prospects round table here with the Hockey Writers. My name is Greg Boysen. I'm going to be your ringleader today as we have our three resident draft gurus with us today. We have Mr. Matthew Zator, Peter Baracchini, and the man who's going to be under the microscope this time. It's Andrew Forbes' turn as we pick apart his latest rankings of the top 100. Just before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's discussion, just a friendly reminder, if you're watching on Facebook, please click the like button. If you're over on our YouTube channel, hit subscribe if you haven't done that already, so you can stay updated on all our great shows we offer across the hockey writers world. And also all of our audio only versions of all of our shows are now available on anywhere and everywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. So if all this beauty on your screen is too much to handle and you just want to listen to the audios, you have that option now. So all right, let's get to why we're here. Andrew, you recently came out with your latest top 100 rankings, and as we did for both Matthew and Peter, we're going to discuss who you think the top guys are and tell you why you're right or most likely wrong. So let's get right to it. Who in your most recent rankings is your top 5 heading into the draft season?
So top 5, top 2, I stuck with Michigan in the NCAA. I have Matty Beniers at number 1. Owen Power sits at number 2. William Eklund at number 3. Dylan Guenther at 4, and Brant Clark at 5.
All right. Is that much of a change from your previous rankings, or is it pretty much the same 5 guys, maybe in a different order?
I think I got Guenther stepped up into my top 5. I did have Beniers at number 1, I believe, in my 64. And then Power, I think, jumped 1 spot to number 2, which says I'm right on line with the NHL Central Scouting. So, I know.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Like I said, I think Guenther jumped a little bit for me. But aside from that, pretty similar top 5.
All righty. Matthew, what do you think of that top 5? How does that line up with how you got them ranked?
It's pretty close. I mean, I had Guenther at 2. Power was a lot lower, but kind of it's a solid top 5. I mean, there's quite a bit of agreement with NHL Central Scouting. We'll talk about that later, but I mean, they can't really go wrong with that top 5. I think Andrew's got it pretty solid.
Okay, Peter, what do you think?
A little disappointed about the Fabian Lysell love, but it is what it is. It's still pretty good, top 5, really solid. Especially with Brant Clark in the tournament that he had at the U18s and Guenther as well. Really can't go wrong with those selections. And William Eklund, phenomenal season over in Sweden. So I'm pretty sure he's deserving of a top 3 spot.
All righty. Well, moving right along, how does your top 10 close out there, Mr. Forbes? What do you got, 6 through 10?
I'm chuckling a little bit because I think Peter's going to be extremely disappointed. But I've got Luke Hughes at number 6, Simon Edvinsson at number 7, Kent Johnson at number 8, Jesper Wallstedt at number 9, and Mason McTavish to close out the top 10. So Fabian Lysell is outside my top 10.
Oh boy. Well, let's get right to it, Peter. Why pick that apart as you wish.
Yeah, no comment. I'm just joking. I mean, still a solid top 10. For me, I think Mason McTavish, with the tournament that he had, taking over Shane Wright as captain at the U18s, was a phenomenal role, a phenomenal job for him. He was a key factor for them winning gold. And I was very, very low on Mason McTavish. Maybe I was missing something, but that tournament really solidified him for me as a top 15 and probably a top 10 prospect as well. So if there is anyone I would take Fabian Lysell out for, it is for Mason McTavish. So I think that was a really good pick.
All right. And Matthew, what do you think of that bottom 5 there?
Yeah, I agree with McTavish jumping up. I mean, I had him towards the second round in my last rankings, and yeah, he impressed at the under 18s, and yeah, he's definitely a top 10 pick for me now. And a little bit of spoilers in my next rankings, but I mean, yeah, Lysell, he's going to be a great player no matter where he gets drafted. He may drop into the top, go into the 15, but yeah, it's still a great bottom 5 or bottom of the top 10. And yeah, it's still a pretty solid list.
Alrighty. Top 10, we've got it out there. Don't forget, you can head over to thehockeywriters.com and, go to our draft guide page. You'll find the rankings. You can see all of Andrew's top 100 plus the most recent rankings from both Matthew and Peter as well. And then hopefully check out some draft profiles while you're there and get, become an expert like the 4 of us. It's not that hard, trust me. So it's been a couple months in between lists for you, Andrew. And so who kind of rose? I mean, you mentioned McTavish there a little bit, and who kind of fell on who's your biggest riser and faller this time around?
I would say Mason McTavish has got to be one of my biggest risers, and precisely why Peter said, like, obviously his U18 tournament, he really stepped up for Canada, had a great tournament, looked great, skating was great, playmaking, hockey IQ, the way he saw the ice was just incredible. But for any team that's looking for maybe that power forward, that typical power forward, I think Mason McTavish kind of fits that role. And I think, he's going to get a lot of looks heading into this draft. And that's why I moved him up into my top 10. I did have Lysell there up until the end of the U18s. And then that's kind of where, Lysell fell outside of the top 10. And I had, obviously McTavish move up. The one guy that did fall for me was Connor Lockhart. I just think, we talked about it last episode. The OHL really hurt some of these guys, and that can still change with the tournament going on in Erie. That's definitely a possibility for him to move back up. But for me, he fell outside of the second round. But another guy to watch, Evan Naus, obviously moved up 10 spots on my latest rankings. I've got him at 46. So early to mid second rounder, but a guy that everyone should keep an eye on, Quebec Ramparts player. So.
All righty. Matthew, who's been kind of switching spots as you've been watching the progress, especially after the U18 Worlds? That was a chance to get a look at guys that literally haven't played all season.
Yeah, the under 18s really bumped up a lot of players for me. I mean, Mason McTavish is probably the biggest guy for me that kind of came out of, I don't know if it was nowhere, but if he would have played the OHL, if the OHL season did go on, he would have been probably a top 10 pick right from the beginning, because he would have played all year. But playing out in EHC Olten over in Europe, I think kind of, then he gets a chance to come over the under 18s and he shone. So I think that's a big riser for me, Mason McTavish, definitely.
And Peter, is there someone that either caught your eye for either the right reasons or the wrong reasons during that tournament, made a move on your list?
For the right reason, Fedor Svechkov. I mean, Russia was an absolute powerhouse, and having the talent with Matvei Michkov and a bunch of other players on that team, but Svechkov really took the reins as an offensive powerhouse, getting 10 points in that tournament. For the wrong reasons, I kind of was a bit disappointed with Simon Edvinsson and his play, especially early on in the tournament. He just looked out of sorts. I know he's a very big, mobile, strong, steady two-way defenseman, but he got beat sometimes pretty easily at times. And I guess, minus the Canada game, or the Canada games rather, he still had some inconsistent efforts and shifts. Maybe fallen a bit out of my favor, but it's still going to be, hopefully it was just maybe a one-time thing, maybe jitters of the tournament or something like that. But he was really impressed. I was really impressed with him early on. That tournament, maybe not so much.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. It was good to see, especially those OHL guys that hadn't seen the ice, at all this year. So it's nice. And that Erie tournament should be fun to watch and get some last minute info and eyes on guys that didn't get to play. So I'm happy that they're able to do that. That's going to be huge. Before getting to our next topic, just give you guys watching along wherever you are, just a quick reminder to like the Facebook page, subscribe to YouTube, follow us all on Twitter, follow on your favorite podcast outlet, do all that fun stuff so you don't miss a show. So with that said, out of the way, we alluded to it a little earlier. The NHL Central Scouting finally came up with their actual rankings. Before we just had their kind of basic list if they're an A, a B, or a C prospect. Now they finally got to it and they attached numbers to all these guys so we can come together collectively and pick that apart and tell them that they're insane for some of these rankings. Quickly, the North American skaters, they have Owen Power at 1, Mason McTavish. We've heard of him. He shot up to number 2, Kent Johnson 3, Luke Hughes 4, and Dylan Gunther 5. Kind of surprising. Matty Beniers, who some of us have number 1 overall, is ranked 6th among North American skaters. That doesn't mean that's where he's going to fall, but that's a little surprising. And then on the international skaters, William Eklund, no surprise, was rated as their top European skater, which, I think that's a consensus agreement there. But what do we think overall of the NHL Central Scouting? How does that jive with how you feel? We'll start with Peter on this one.
Yeah, seeing Matty Beniers at 6 really kind of shocked me, and seeing Ken Johnson that high, I personally would probably do maybe Owen Power and Matty Beniers 1, 2, and Ken Johnson the 3rd of the University of Michigan trio. Another surprise for me, in a good way, kind of was Wyatt Johnson jumping up to 16th among North American skaters. Really great tournament as well at the U18s, as with a lot of the Canadian players as well. But over at the European skater side, I mean, right at the top of the show, I'm a big fan of Fabian Lysell. To see him at number 9, down lower with someone like Atu Radi ranked ahead of him, considering the inconsistent season that he had, jumping up and down or moving up and down leagues. Fabian Lysell was a consistent point producer and a very important player for Sweden at the U18s. I've been on the hype train for Fabian Lysell from the beginning, and I'm going to continue with that because I think maybe he's just getting a little bit overshadowed at this point.
All righty. When is the appointment for the Fabian Lysell tattoo, Peter? I feel that's coming up soon.
No, honestly, I've been thinking long and hard about tattoos, but not about a Fabian Lysell one. So right. Maybe not so much.
There's at least a jersey coming in your future, I think.
I'm hoping.
We'll hold off. All right. Matthew, what do you think of the Central Scouting rankings that came out?
Oh, I echo the Beniers thing. I mean, dropping to 6, I'm not sure if that's correct, but I mean, it's not like he's going to drop that far. I think a team will take him in the top 3. A guy that I love is Coronado. Talking about tattoos, I think again Coronado tattoo for me. But I mean, he was not 9th on the North American skaters, so I mean, I'm not totally out to lunch. I mean, you look at what he did in the playoffs, but leading to the Clark Cup there too for the Chicago Steel. He was a powerhouse there, and he's a deserved top 10 pick in the North American skaters. That is, I mean, that one's for sure. And Beniers dropping European skaters. Yeah, Lysell dropping that far. And I'm out of the hope that the Canucks are able to draft him if they're in that range. But yeah, overall, I think the Central Scouting, there's a few misses on where they ranked guys.
Yeah, I got to go to game 2 of the Clark Cup final here in Chicago and got to see Coronado and that whole group of talented guys they got in Chicago. And he's an impressive player to see in person. And I got to actually talk to him and a few guys after the game. And he seems like a good kid off the ice too, which is key to these type of things as well. So, I hope he does well. There's a lot of really good guys on that Chicago Steel team this season. Andrew, NHL Central Scouting, yay, nay? Do you Are you applying for a job there next summer?
Well, first off, I'll let you both know that tattoos are great. Go get some, whether it be the players' names or Peter, if we want to get the Stanley Cup with 2021 written on it. But no, to go off of that, I think I'll echo what both of these guys said. I think there was a bunch of misses on NHL Central Scouting this year. And that's just a testament to the times that we're in right now. I mean, you didn't get to see half these guys play. But, a guy that stood out for me on the North American side, aside from Beniers, which I think you guys both mentioned, is Olin Zellweger. And they had him down at 45th. And, he might be a sleeper to some, but he's definitely a guy that I thought was going to be a little bit higher just in terms of what he was able to do, with Everett and at the U18s and stuff like that. Like I don't think he's getting as much love as maybe he deserves. But on the European side, I mean, I'll be a third for that Lysell train. I had him at number 11. So yeah, just outside my top 10, but maybe they know something that we don't. I'm not really sure why he's as low as he is. Another guy that I'm going to go kind of off the board in terms of, having a little bit less credit to his name is Florian Elias. Had a great World Juniors for Germany. And just, they have him at 39th, and maybe he's not getting as much love. He's a smaller guy, but a guy that I wouldn't mind seeing maybe in the top 30 in terms of international skaters. But, we'll see where he ends up. And it's going to be exciting to see how wrong NHL Central Scouting got it when it's all said and done.
Yeah, it will be fun to see how that shakes out. It's always fun to go to any draft rankings like 5 or 6 years later and see how that panned out. Maybe in 2025 we'll come back together and revisit this and see where we're at. Last time we got together, we talked about the OHL not having a season, how that adversely affected a lot of prospects heading into this draft. So kind of let's flip the coin and talk about the other side of that. A couple of leagues specifically here in North America, the Quebec Major League and the USHL pretty much had full seasons, at least about as full as you're going to get. How did that affect guys who maybe are now much higher up on the board because they had a lot of eyes on them this year as opposed to those guys? Matthew, we'll start with you. The Q and the USHL, they're going to have a better showing this draft because they got to play?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at the USHL, they probably the most stable league overall. I mean, they really didn't have a lot of news that coronavirus, this COVID got in the way. They did a phenomenal job making sure that the players were safe and all that. And I think that's a big thing for the players that played in that league and that came over, that came over from the WHL and like Cole Sillinger, which, he decided to go to the USHL instead and played really well and probably a lot more eyes on him than if he would have played in the dub. So it was a huge thing having the USHL play that full season. You look at guys like Coronado, got a lot more eyes on him, and he probably would have had eyes on him anyway with this season he had. But yeah, overall, it was huge for these guys to play a full season, and it was great that the league took so much into account to be safe for the players involved.
Yeah, they did a really, really good job, the USHL. And it was a little tougher because they didn't play in any kind of bubbles or anything like that. So hats off to everybody in that league for essentially, I think that there was only a handful of games that had to get postponed or moved around, but for the most part, it went off fairly, delay free, which, even the NHL had its major issues during the course of the year. So kudos to everyone involved there. Peter, what do you think of, the Q in the USHL? Are we going to get a better showing from them come July?
Absolutely. No doubt. And, kind of the same thing, the scouts had more games to witness with them than opposed to OHL players, but it's a good thing that, this showcase is happening right now. So the players that did miss out have at least still had that chance to have a lasting impression on the scouts. So Shout out to Andrew Parrott, who we've had on the 6 and the 6, and a bunch of other players to put that whole tournament together and give these kids an opportunity, and it could be their last chance. So great opportunity for them. But yeah, I mean, especially for me this year, watching a lot of the Q games, I know Andrew mentioned him, Evan Naus. I grew into be a really big fan of his with his defensive play. Coronado, another one, but a lot of other names, Tristan Braz, Jack Peart, Brent Johnson, a lot of USHL names just tearing it up and really caught my eye. So it's a testament to that league and the amount of talent that they're developing for the NHL. And I mean, not necessarily move over CHL, but that's another league that's going to have a lot of great talent coming up on the pipeline.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the USHL is becoming a real cooking pot for NHL talent. I mean, obviously, you get to see it a lot in Chicago and what they've put together. But 3 names that I want to mention in my latest rankings that definitely profited off of this season, and you guys named 2 of them. In Coronado, I had him at 40 in my rankings 2 months ago. He's now sitting at 18. Another guy, Evan Naus, moved up 9 spots from 55 to 46. But one guy that wasn't even on my top 64 and is now sitting 55 is Ryan Ufko from the Chicago Steel as well. USHL, right-handed defenseman. You hear it all the time. Right-handed defensemen don't exist in the NHL anymore, but this is a great opportunity for a guy like him. Got a lot of eyes on him, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But I see him going mid-second round, and I think he's going to be a great grab for whoever can get their hands on him.
Yeah, I'm a big Ufko fan too. Got to see him play twice live in the last few weeks. He's got to work on his skating, but he's got plenty of time to do that. I'm a big fan of his, and not to turn this into the Chicago Steel hour, but another kid that I think big time benefited of, and I really was impressed the 2 games I got to see him play live, is Jack Barr, who came down to play for the Steel. That kid can fly. He's such a great skater, and it's so easy and fluid for him. He's got a lot to work on defensively, but man, the potential there. And I think he's a guy that probably jumped up on a lot of draft boards because he made the decision to play in the USHL. He's one I'm going to be watching. And if there was a way you could morph Ryan Ufko's defensive play with Jack Barr's skating, you would have like the greatest defenseman maybe ever.
Put him on the same pairing.
that might well, that worked pretty good in Chicago, so you might be onto something.
Balance it out. Balance is key.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see, and me being down here, in Chicago, in the heart of USHL country and scouting for the North American League in this area. I love that the USHL is making so much progress and not catching up so much to the CHL, but definitely making it, a more competitive balance to where, and that's great for everybody because now kids have more options on where to go. If you're going to go play in the OHL and you're maybe a borderline 4th liner, but you can then now go play in Omaha or Fargo and be a 2nd or 1st liner, you take that option. So it's okay sometimes to be a big fish in a smaller pond, and it's making that league better throughout, which is good for everybody. All right, we're going to end this get together with a little fun exercise. We're going to let our 3 draft experts here play general manager. Since this draft doesn't have that consensus number 1 overall pick, there's no Connor McDavid, there's no Austin Matthews. Not saying there isn't great talent in this draft there is, but there isn't that one guy that everybody's salivating to get their hands on. So I assigned each of these guys a team. I picked the 3 teams that have the greatest odds to win that number 1 pick, and that's the Buffalo Sabres, the Anaheim Ducks, and the New Jersey Devils. So each one of these guys is going to take, if they were in the GM chair, who they would pick number 1 for that specific team based on the needs and roster construction. And we'll start with our man of the hour, Andrew, and he got the Buffalo Sabres. So if you're the general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, first off, I'm sorry. Second of all, who is the guy you're taking that's going to make Jack Eichel want to stay in town?
I was thinking long and hard about this one because there's so many holes in Buffalo right now. It's not even funny. If I'm going on need alone, man, this team needs a goalie. Team needs a goalie, but we all know I'm not going Jesper Wallstad with the number 1 pick. So I would say you want to give a little bit more offense surrounding Jack Eichel if you're looking to get him to stay. So I'm going Matty Beniers or William Eklund with the number 1 pick. Probably Beniers, simply because I think he's got the size, he's got the stability, he's got the skating, he's got the hands. He's a guy that can really fit in nicely with a player like Jack Eichel, and gives you that 1-2 punch up front. He can probably make that jump right away and be in a Buffalo Sabres uniform from the get-go to start next season. So Matty Beniers with the number 1 pick for Buffalo.
All right, you heard it here first. Those Sabre fans can trade in those old Connor McDavid jerseys you bought a few years ago and switch them up for Matty Beniers jerseys. Matthew, I gave you the Ducks because in a normal season you would watch a little more Ducks hockey than you have this season. But they're an interesting team if they get the number 1 overall pick, because they've got a lot of really good top prospects coming along. They may have some positions kind of already filled, so to speak. So who, if you're Bob Murray, who are you taking with that first pick?
I mean, yeah, the Ducks are an interesting case. You look at, the Getzlaf is ending his career soon, probably, maybe going on 1-year deals. He's not that number 1 center he used to be. They got Trevor Zegras, who's ridiculous, but I mean, their need is still offense. I mean, they need to score some goals since Perry and now Getzlaf's declining. Raquel's kind of up and down. I'm going to go with either William Eklund or I would say Mason McTavish. I mean, to replace a guy like Getzlaf at the top of your lineup and that power forward presence, Mason McTavish definitely fits that bill. And William Eklund, what do you say about him? He's all offense. So, but ultimately, I'm going to go with Mason McTavish for first overall. He hasn't been discussed in that realm a lot, but to replace that need as that top number 1 center, I'm going McTavish for the Ducks.
That makes sense, because this is one of those weird years where you're drafting number 1. You should be drafting for need as opposed to just that once in a generation type talent, which makes this discussion so interesting. And Peter, I'm going to give you the Devils, who, they've got some talent up front already. So are they looking maybe for a defenseman number 1 overall, or is there a forward that's just too good to pass up at that position?
I mean, Matt and Andrew already took 2 really talented forwards. I'm probably going to lean over to defense, and it's not the number 1 overall. I'm going to go with Brent Clark, mainly because they could use some offensive punch from the back end. They could use some mobility and the offensive power, as I mentioned. Not only that, he does get caught defensively at times, but he still has great, instincts on when to block players out, when to go in for board battles. He's very physical. So he's got that size already to possibly be inserted, maybe not automatically into the top 4, but he already has the frame where maybe if he does continue to improve, he gets that chance sooner than later. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his brother Graham is on the Devils as well. So you got that family familiarity right then and there as well. So my pick, New Jersey Devils, Brant Clark.
All right. Very good. Very good. It will be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. Of course, the draft lottery is still a few days away, a couple of weeks away. We'll find out who gets that number 1 pick. And considering my track record with these sort of things, we just did the Sabres, the Ducks, the Devils, which means none of those 3 teams are getting the top pick. Sorry, Buffalo, New Jersey, and Anaheim. But now, some team like, the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to sneak in there and get that top pick. So
the New York Rangers.
All right. Yeah, let's not do
Kraken.
that again.
The Kraken.
Are the Kraken even allowed to get the number 1 pick? I thought they were forbidden to get the number 1 overall pick. I know Vegas was a few years ago.
I think they're guaranteed top 3, but I don't think they could go lower than maybe 5 or 6, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure how that worked out, but yeah, it'll be fun to see. Maybe, the next time we get back together, we'll know that draft order and at least for the lottery teams, and we can have a further discussion on who goes where. That'll be fun. So that's going to wrap up this edition of another Draft Prospects Roundtable. Thank you guys all for clicking and watching and heading over to the Hockey Writers and reading all of our great draft coverage. It's going to continue up until and beyond the draft. So please keep following along, keep checking the website every day, bookmark that 2021 draft guide and click it. There's new stuff coming up every day, more draft profiles, features, really good stuff. Matthew's been leading the charge for that. So hats off to you, Stick Tap, on a great start to the coverage. It's only going to get better as we get through the draft. So thank you, everybody. Again, thank you to Matthew, Peter, and Andrew. You can follow us all on Twitter. Like and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. Subscribe on your favorite podcast outlet. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.